Right on in, Ramon. It's your
Okay.
moment.
No, so I've been asked to be part of a debate on right versus left issues, etc. And the guy the guy is predictably already waffling about the debate. And what I'm finding interesting is that so many of these so-called progressives, which I call regressives myself, they want to try and win the debate before they've gotten in, because they always lose by facts. So you go in with actual facts about, say, the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, the connections to oil, Burisma, etc. And they don't like that, so they want to try and control it ahead of time. So I just want to put it on record that I predicted this guy would waffle about it. We'll see if he actually does the debate. Um, Drone Tech's channel is the perfect place to host it, because it's not a huge channel, but it's definitely got followers. And I just would, I'd like to call him out. Now, I've already said he's yellow before, and I don't mind to say it again. However, it's just amazing to me the desire and need of people from the far left to try and control everything, and not understand that you don't have to control. If you want to be liberal, okay, you don't have control over the words that come out of other people's mouths, right? The words that come out of their mouths, that comes from inside of them. That's what liberty is. That's what liberalism is. So I just thought I'd take some time, call it out, and the rest of the time we can have a good time talking about good stuff. um, I wanted, what we haven't covered is the that black hole. Not only the black hole disappearing act, but then the news coming out that fusion is being done with at a magnetic Z-pinch. So I thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking, because I did release a new paper about the cosmic rearrangement hypothesis. I thought we'd spend a little bit of time discussing, that. Obviously, probably most people are not aware of those stories in the first place. The mainstream did announce it, but it's not exactly one of the things that get trumpeted to the high heavens like James Webb Telescope or something. So, did you guys get a chance to see the Z-pinch article and the other one? I'm thinking about writing a short reply to like a little, do a little victory dance in paper form.
Well, how it was announced, as far as I could see it, Ramon, it was as though it was absolute revolutionary new information that some crackpot underground scientists had never, has come out of the woodwork, and is, it's not stuff that's been completely predicted. And also, basically, well, we've known about that, the Z pinch, and the creation of the zero energy field at the point of the Z pinch, where light is emitted even in a vortex of water. Never mind high energy electricity, and
Right.
and
That's
now
a key
I
point.
think the next step for these people is to couch all this phenomena in terms that gravitic people might understand. Really, it's just they just use a different vocabulary to us and say exactly what's been said by the electric universe.
Yeah, that's a key thing. A lot of people don't realize. I used to be on the global warming bandwagon, and I used to be a Big Bang person, and I used to be an atheist. So I completely understand their position, and it's only by understanding what they're saying that we can have an alternative perspective and position. And in fact, I'd say we have to know it better than they do on average, because once they decided something is settled science, they move on. They don't keep looking at it and wondering if there's maybe something else to learn about it. And the simple fact of the matter is that, as you say, they've been changing the words from what their standard definitions are, in order to kind of account for these, revelations. For example, calling the center of the Earth an electric dynamo, and a dynamo had a specific usage and meaning in electromagnetism history, going back well into the late 1800s, or describing as magnetic flux ropes or magnetic jets, as if that is a actual description of what's going on. And I guess they've gotten away with it because they've called it solar winds for so long. Even we call it solar winds, and it's not a wind at all. The sun is involved, but it's an electric field. It's an ionic electric field that's in motion, which means it's electrical, because it's in an electric field and it's moving charges, which means it's electricity. So, I think that there's some culpability from our side. My disturbing feeling is that once again, this kind of information will be relegated, like you said, to some kind of backwater garage scientist, discovery, and then actually the real knowledgeable science will go underground, and if you talk about it, you'll be a conspiracy theorist, because in between us and those government programs and military programs is a cadre of general relativity clickishness, where they control the language by telling people you don't know enough math in order to talk about the topic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a spot on analysis. That happens all the time as well. They acknowledge that there's something about the science. They'll say we don't understand this, or we can't do this, especially with comets and this solar system stuff. The Thunderbolts Project people do a great job of pointing this out with little quotes, little snippets in their videos. And then when you look into it further, they know that everything's electromagnetic, but they won't say it in a forum they won't hire Neil deGrasse Tyson to come on to mainstream television and tell people, oh, by the way, there's been a giant shift in our understanding because we had a black hole disappear, and actually it turns out there never was a black hole. So what we were really measuring was a magnetic Z-pinch at a high amount of mass, which turns out to be charge at the center of mass geometric location. So they never come out and say that kind of thing.
Yeah, and by the way, these 120 million light year wide structures are probably not 120 million. They're just probably the same as the other ones, but just a bit closer due to your redshift fuck-ups. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out of the wash with this. When people have even had a chance to look at the Gaia stuff, never mind the James Webb. And it's as the data is being released, they're having to backtrack, and change the language. And
right. So for our audience, we should remind them that Gaia is the name of a satellite. I think it's Gaia DR2.
That was data released too. So they released data from the satellite.
Right.
This is the third data release coming.
It totally messed them up. They what was it, like 3 times the distances that they were off by? Something like the Earth measurements were like 2 to 3 times further than the actual when they got up there with Gaia.
Yeah. I mean, they had to throw about 30,000 stars off the catalogue because they were just ridiculous estimations of their the distance away. Completely, or they disappeared entirely. And so they're generally having to retweak all the models as we speak. I think.
To the credit of the mainstream astrophysicists, they do. It's not their job to take it further, but it is interesting. I'm imagining, whenever they make a positive discovery, they're probably banging at the phone, hitting the numbers so hard to get themselves on TV. Whereas when they have to announce a screw up, it's sort of a, well, let's push this out to phys.org. Oh, well, sorry about that, and then move on. But it's actually a really, really big deal. Like, when you falsify bad science, it should theoretically, based on how science is designed, get twice as much publicity as the positive discovery, because the positive discoveries are usually not discoveries.
Well,
They're usually theoretical guesses.
To be fair to the ESA, they did revise the data, well, the information that they'd released, and it takes quite a lot for a company or an entity to do that, because it means that someone was previously wrong. And now no one's accepted the blame for their data being wrong. It's just they say, well, that was our available information at the time.
Well, and that, I guess that's acceptable, human error or just theoretical error. But at what point, now that they have, they've got a Methuselah star that's older than Big Bang, according to them. Of course, we know it wouldn't be older than Big Bang if Big Bang was such a thing. But if they have such a thing and they have these issues with dating and Doppler redshift, why they won't admit it, though, is that the four legs upon which Big Bang stands on are all wobbly as hell. And they've already themselves knocked a couple out from under them, their own table. And they don't want people to know that. And, that's like kind of a, mutually agreed form of conspiracy, right? It's not exactly like a bunch of shady guys got together in a back room and decided. However, I bet if you went after it, you wouldn't get much different a response Velikovsky, got from Shapley out of Harvard astronomy, and you'd be canceled, and you'd be the scum of the earth, and you're basically equal to a cartel terrorist. Actually, those people are better these days because those are victims, right? They're minority victims. So it's a serious problem in science today to get actual redactions. There were those journals that had purposely fake made papers, and they published them, and then when it was revealed, hey, we did a practical joke on you, they went after those people. I gotta mute myself.
Okay, you there, Andy?
Yeah. I'm here, Nick. I was just reading that article that he was talking from.
Right.
Yeah. So I see they talk about using a laser. So I must have got that idea off old mud fossil, mate.
I can't see what he's got up on the screen here. Oh, is it in the comments?
Yeah, it's in the comments.
All right.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't last night. It's the one before. Scientists confirm thermonuclear fusion.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read it in a bit in phys.org. I mean, they're not selling us anything we didn't know before, because that Martin Fleischmann experiment. Have you come across it yet, Grouch?
Which one?
Martin Fleischmann. No. It's a physicist called Brian Greenier talking through it. Bob Greenier, sorry.
Yep.
And he's been doing this 0 point energy with the solitons, basically, and his work's really congruent with Dan Winter, and I know you follow a bit of his stuff, don't you?
Yep.
Well, this guy, he's looking at these solitons and what they can do, and the Hutchison effect, and
yes.
And he's basically saying that the matter forms the structures according to the shapes of the energy which surround it. That's these dark energies that they're describing, and What is it?
But they're not really dark energies if you
No,
think about it in a realistic term, right?
no, they're not. They're
So,
not.
so when
And,
you go back,
and,
when you go
and
back to the older writings, it was always classed as a female male or minus plus. It wasn't. It's only recently that we have this, like good and bad,
yeah, that's right.
dark,
That's
dark and
right.
light.
That's right.
Anyway,
It's a lot of
keep going.
bullshit. And so anyway, he's got this model where basically light matter is formed by light traveling at various velocities. The more velocity, the more solid the matter or dense the matter. The more energy is in the light. The bigger the particle. Of you know what I'm trying to say.
Yep. So what you're saying is the particle actually gets formed by light. Is that more what
Well,
you're saying?
eventually,
Yeah.
yeah. The energy is
Yeah.
transmuted
Yeah.
into matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Light.
so that's a good segue into the cosmic rearrangement hypothesis, because you brought up earlier that we see these so-called transmutations. We see them in biology. We see them in low-level water conditions. We see them all over the place. They just don't talk. They don't want to talk about it, but it's actually been measured many, many times, as well as in the sapphire chamber in high energy conditions. And now they, of course, know about it, and they want to utilize plasma and magnetism with radio waves. Let's not forget they want to use radio waves to control the plasmoid in chamber and tokamak, everything electromagnetic, in order to create this fusion. And nature's doing it just like bloop, it just does it. And so without a structured atomic model, I guess why they're confused about how it actually happens.
Yeah, and nature does it at low temperature, at room temperatures. Biology does it at room temperatures. Fusion is happening at very low temperatures, and and this is what they're starting to recognise now.
This
And
is
it
this
happened.
implosion.
And
The
it, yeah, and
implosion system they talk about, not the explosion system.
that's right. Yeah.
Whereby it happens in relatively stable, cool environments.
It's a tumbling. Everything is about the needs of the energetics of the system. I mean, it's essentially chemistry, but now chemistry taken to its end ideas, which is that systems want to rearrange in order to fulfill their valence conditions, and that would include what's inside the atoms as well as between the atoms inside the molecules and between the molecules and other molecules, because there are spontaneous, maybe the audience doesn't know this, there are spontaneous chemical reactions that happen in nature, and new compounds will be formed, and they say that it's got to happen by random interaction. That's not the case at all. These chemistries will find each other. They'll go almost out of their way to locate each other through electric field and become attached, and then they will break off portions of the molecules, and then those will rearrange with other ones. And then you have inside the molecules, the atoms themselves are rearranging. And now with the structured atomic model, and what I'm liking to call SAM2, in order to work with the cosmic rearrangement hypothesis, you need an improved model of light. And so that's where I've introduced the SAM2 kind of concept, still structured atomic model. But now you have these electrical circuit connections happening between positrons and electrons. Of course, there's no neutrons at all. Those are just a temporary condition that exist. Of course, they're very hard to break apart, as we know. That's how you get hydrogen bombs. The power of them is that you break apart these positron-electron pairs, and it releases tons and tons of energy. However, in nature,
for a relatively short term.
These small interactions can happen. Let's say a beta particle or a cosmic ray, something hits the nucleus, just the right angle and just the right conditions, and a circuit is formed, and that circuit energizes, accelerates the particles, which when you look at what's in quote inside an electron or positron, it's just more empty space. It's just more energy packets. And so these circuits rearrange, and boom, suddenly you have new so-called new materials. But relative to the universe, it's just a different energy state. You know, what seems normal or room temperature to us is high temperature and high pressure to something else.
Agreed.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
You guys.
And well, I read Ramon's light paper, the one he did with Rob, and that takes a bit of reading. That. Did you read that yet, Nick?
No, I haven't read that yet. No.
That's actually quite and when Ramon comes back, I'll ask him, am I right in saying, well, basically what Rob's saying is light isn't I think Ramon did too. Light as we know it, so I don't know how they can measure the speed of something that doesn't exist. If you get what I mean by that, it's not a particle and that yet, so it technically hasn't become it's not a solid or anything, so how do you measure its speed?
Yeah, I mean,
or is it more like a prism? You look straight through it.
Yeah, is it a particle that expands until it's got no surface? You know, it's there's so many ways of looking at it. It's not understood. I will read any theory that's put before me, and I know they've been hacking through this a lot, Rob and Ramon. But my natural instinct is it's not a particle, or if it is a particle, it can get to a very big one from a very small source, because it seems to travel in all directions, you know, from a source.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll let someone else, you know, deliberate that one at the moment.
There's a lot of resources in that paper too, you know, like I probably spent 4 hours going through all the different links and tabs he has to it.
Oh yeah.
With regards to, we're actually talking about your light. We're talking about your light paper.
Oh yeah.
That you and Rob did, you know. So the conclusion at the end of it, Ramon,
I did it, and then he wrote his own little paper inside my paper.
Mate, it's actually pretty well done. And like I was just saying to Nick, the links in it, you know, like I probably spent 4 or 5 hours going through the you know, your links that you had in there of that you were coming up with your reasoning, and Rob too. And I just thought it was a pretty good paper. So at the end of it, as Nick just said, well, we'd probably say light isn't a particle, but we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, I mean,
the right conclusion?
It's not a ball. It's not a little bouncing ball, but you know what it is, as far as a circuit goes. I mean, Robert's not wrong. You know, everything is a construction. So it being a construction of packets of energy, I would accept that if that's what they would say. If that's what they would admit, that it's an electrical construct. But they won't say that. They will continue to tell people that it's this, you know, bouncing ball that's sometimes a ball and sometimes it's a wave, and that's not accurate. I mean, it can be modeled those ways, but it's just not what's actually occurring deep inside. So it's a serious issue, in my opinion. I mean, without that improvement, where does the structured atomic model go in terms of explaining these rearrangements? They're relegated to using the same old chemistry that is a problem paradigm-wise, and then we're stuck inside the same cage. And I reckon that the whole point of us building a new cosmology is to get out of the cage, because the cage is where they get their power from.
Mhm.
Right? That's where the system gets its power over the people. First, they tell you this is how it all works. We know the answers. And you say, "Great, I'm a good kid. I've learned that from you. You've taught me." Okay, now we need you to believe in global warming. Yeah, okay, good. I believe in global warming. And this is how the science is. You can't question it. Okay, all right. I believe in settled science. It's final and complete and everything. Okay, now the universe is all going to die. You guys can't eat meat, but you can eat people. And we're going to need to reduce the population by 80+%. You on board? And you go, whoa, whoa. Oh no! And by the way, we're going to use this patented, manufactured disease to conjure up a rule that you get vaccinated and tracked and microchipped. Did we announce to you that we were all Satanists and that you all look like cows to us? Right? That's how that happens. So it's very important that we take control of our own destinies.
Yeah,
It sure is.
well, that not only do we take control of it, being allowed to, but that we want to as well.
Absolutely.
You know, that's one of the big problems. There's too many
Yeah,
don't want
apathy is a
to.
big problem for sure. Apathy is a big problem.
So this English doctor, and I've been listening to him on YouTube now for over 12 months, and he brings the data. He would put the data out on the vax stuff and
Yeah.
what was going on where and how it was going and all that, and the efficiencies, and you go, oh, it looks like another one will have to be, another one will have to be, and then I should actually put it in the chat, and then it today or yesterday he was so demoralised because there's some group with a website that's been able to get hold of a massive amount of data. In the US, and it's shown all these faults and the amount of people that have had bad effects to especially the mRNA ones.
Yeah, the Pfizer.
And he was like, hang on a minute, they've known about this. We trust them, and as a medical professional, I have to trust what I'm given to use. And now we're seeing the whole thing. They've known that there's been all this, and that they've continued to do it.
Right, without mentioning the word, the koof word, what the audience needs to know.
No, we can't use that.
They announced the data that there were 1,200 side effects.
Yes, that's right. So you know what I'm talking about, Ramon.
Hmm?
Yes, you know what I'm talking about, and
Yeah,
the number of and apparently in amongst that, so there's some website that a group have set up, and it's got probable deaths as well included in that. So
Inestimable.
Give me the link to that site.
Yeah, the thing is, the judiciary's forced them to release the documents, and which they didn't want to release, and they have released the document, but it's in a redacted format, and it will be gradually unredacted over the next 6 months.
Yeah,
so watch this space.
It might happen faster with this whole Ukraine biolab situation, which I knew right away that it wasn't going to be fake. As soon as people were talking about it, I was like, oh, this is going to turn out to be true. And here we go. It's actually coming out. And they under oath. So they come out and they say, oh, Putin's talking Russian propaganda. Well, yeah, that's true. He is talking Russian propaganda, but you're also talking propaganda. And then under oath, they go and say, yeah, so we have biolabs. Under oath, that's what they admit.
Well, what they admitted to under oath was, well, it wasn't any American companies with the biolabs. Of course, it was probably their company's money, or they got the funding from somewhere.
Right.
But so the first thing that the woman responsible said was, well, it wasn't Americans. A bit like Dr. Fauci, it was the Chinese.
Yes.
So here we go again. And what's the next product they're going to have up for? Oh, well, this one's going to save you from the latest Russian biohazard.
What I've been trying to tell everybody is that in the end, you're not going to have any choice. You'll have to physically fight because they do want to eat you. They want your organs and your kids. They want to control your kids. They want to groom your kids and turn them into clowns that don't know who they are. And they want to reduce the population. They've been trying to control it since 1974. We've got the release documents. And the IDs, the digital IDs that are happening. They want to track people. And all this is related to how they can control the mind. Everything is about mind control, of course. So it's just CIA, MK Ultra stuff, but on a bigger scale. And if people don't get real with that, they're going to end up becoming the victim. I mean, they're already a victim, especially people who really think these were vaccines. I mean, can you imagine people who've gotten several of these already? And now it's going to come out that it's producing prions and all this stuff. You know, it's gonna cause. I mean, I'm going to get this video demonetized, or blocked, or whatever you want to say. It's already demonetized. We never monetize anything on the show, but like I say, without mentioning the Koof name, we can. I think everybody knows what we're talking about. And in the end, the fact that we're not supposed to be able to talk about it is an indication that in the end, we will have to fight. And in such a case, I advocate that all my viewers get armed and start training. It's not enough to just have a gun. I have so many people in the world of self-defense. They take one course, they're done. If they buy a gun then or get a CCW permit and they learn how to shoot, that means that they're trained. You are not trained. You don't have capability. You're just going to be a victim either of yourself or a shootout with the police because you don't know your rights. You don't know your rights. First of all, if the police come to your home, well, in general, you don't have to talk to the police, right? But in the United States, but if the police come to your home, if they don't present a physical warrant, don't go outside. Just close the door. They can't come in because they don't have an actual warrant. Okay, now if they have a real warrant, they could present that warrant. Okay, now if they perform a no-knock raid, you absolutely, under the Supreme Court, have the right to defend yourself unless you're committing a crime. If you're committing a crime, then you're a criminal. But if you have a home invasion happens, and that home invasion was an unannounced police raid, you have the right to defend yourself. That's been a long-term ruling, especially ever since Ruby Ridge, where the FBI took the L on that, and it was announced from the government's own lips. Yes, if a law enforcement officer breaks the law and violates your constitutional rights, you have the right to defend yourself up to and including killing him or several persons on the spot. So, when they eventually come to try and force people into internment camps and all this kind of stuff, all because we all think the quote wrong way, which is actually the right way, but it's not the way they want you to think, then you have to be able to defend yourself, which means you need martial arts lessons, you need firearm lessons, you need knife lessons, you need wrestling, especially if you live in one of those countries where you don't have those rights to firearms, then you need all the other training even more. You need hand-to-hand, knife, stick, gun, boxing, wrestling, all those kinds of skills, all the more increased, because at some point, and I don't know how far away, they are going to make this issue a mind control issue, and it is going to involve, hey, we're lying to you. We know we're lying. We intend to keep lying, but you're going to do what we say. And if you want to do that, fine. But me, it's not for me. I'd rather be dead.
Well, from what I can understand, listening to a few alternatives, the issue in Ukraine could be sorted a lot earlier than we were expecting. I think a combination of those bio labs, a combination that he basically grabbed the majority of their army about to attack Donbass. Then, now what was the other one? So there's a few reasons. Oh, and then you see all of a sudden Poland didn't want to send the MiGs, and they offered to give them to the US to send them, and the US said, "Oh no, we can't do that either." No. And there is that squeeze system going on, and I feel that it will get sorted a lot quicker than we possibly thought, especially now with those labs, because I tend to feel that there might be stuff away in there that, well, they don't want people to know they've been playing with. It is amazing how the mainstream press is saying very little about it. Yeah. It is amazing that they're saying very little about that. They're also saying very little about the paper that we were speaking about before.
You say that,
to the point of saying nothing.
Tucker Carlson has actually come out and talked about those biolabs and talked about the press conference. And so, you know, there are people who are on it.
That's what I mean.
You know, who does the audience listen to? Now, if they go off and listen to mainstream propaganda tools, then they themselves will become the victims of mainstream propaganda. And then we'll end up further and further away from each other until the misunderstanding turns into blow for blow, which is what I reckon we're headed to. I don't see any way around it, actually. I'm not advocating it, but I just don't see any difference. I don't see how we will cover the gap, because the one side is unwilling to admit that we have a treasonous president, probably controlled by Compromat, who rigged an election. Now both sides are rigging the election, and I reckon things will go back to business as usual as far as politicking and electing go in this country. But the creation of a one-party state inside the United States is a serious issue. Now, the fracturing of the world order and even the new world order into its own groups, they're all rushing ahead on their own personal agendas. And I think the World Economic Forum is getting ahead of itself. This Klaus Schwab doesn't realize that there are forces on this planet. They'll come for him. And there are others who will start to notice what they're up to. And this is the thing, humans conspire because they have personal agendas and monetary motivation. They have means, motive, and opportunity. And as far as the cosmology goes, they will change when nature makes them change, or the money incentive changes it. And that the money incentive, I think, is going to go first. Robert Ashcroft seems to think it's going to be nature first. I don't really know which one will be first, but there will be a forced change. They themselves are already changed. Of course, they don't want to use the right terminology, because that would need to admit that Big Bang fell apart. And you know, is the fact that it did so in real time between 2012 and now is, you know, pretty amazing stuff to have beheld. It really accelerated after the Large Hadron Collider, you know, and then they got Gaia up there, and the Gaia data started coming back. But all this is going to happen with the backdrop of mind control and population control, and using the wrong descriptions of why climate change happens.
Right, what they're going to do, Ramon, is what they've always done, and that's set the population upon each other, and then mop up when there's nothing left. And so it's all right, everyone being in a state of readiness, but you've got to make sure you're fighting the right target, you know, the right enemy. So I think you're better off making alliances, sort of personal military alliances, so that you protect your neighbours and they protect you.
Absolutely. You've got to work together.
Yes, that's right. But only on a, you know, as far as I'm concerned, on an information and knowledge basis. Forearmed is forewarned. Forewarned is forearmed. I mean,
the Welsh did all the above, right? So they had hill forts, and obviously they were each fort was its own kingdom, in the original sense. You know, there was a king over here and a king over there, just like in regular Europe, right? I don't know why it's supposed to be different in England. You know, it's one king.
It isn't different in England. It was the same here as well.
Yeah.
You know, of course, every community was as small as it could be to be a complete unique operating system.
Right. And they would, you know, they'd call in when the invaders came, they would call in and they go inside the wall and everybody would work together and bring the livestock.
That's right. They'd get all the cattle up to the stockade. They'd go to the points and get their arms, and then they'd get their orders, and that's when the fires go off.
And by helping each other, they defeated the Romans.
Defend it.
They defeated Julius Caesar. So that, which is no small feat in that time, because the Romans were so far advanced culturally and technologically compared to the world, that it's no small feat they defeated the Romans. I don't know if the Romans could have handled the warring states of China, but as far as the rest of the world goes, I mean, they were really just unstoppable. The Greeks were completely bowled over, and the Greeks were not slouches as far as military is concerned.
Well, so the British weren't knocked over very easily at all. I mean, it took 30 years to get the 150 miles north from the Fosse Way. So and as far as this 400-year occupation of Great Britain by the Romans, I don't think it lasted that long, personally.
I think they gave up well before that. I think that they did what Wilson and Blackett were saying and made alliances and technology and Roman palaces and roads and all this stuff up there.
Exactly. The actual it was just a cartel, a trade cartel, an expansionist one that had a great military model, and as it consumed more places, its army got bigger, and you know it was just off it went, and it was hardly a controllable system. It just ate everything until it got too fat and then imploded. And you know, the British, of course, all their technologies and systems were kind of subsumed and then forgotten about. You know,
Nick, I think when you look at the Roman one, it took a good 200 years to properly die. So in that regard, but it had through that last of its period, it had a combination of a lot of bad practices develop, plus at the same time there was a lot of natural disasters occurring as well, with things such as earthquakes, volcanoes,
absolutely,
especially. So it sort of ran into all those things all at once, which you got to wonder in some ways if we're running into that a bit now, because we do know there are some weather changes at the moment that are abnormal. We've had some volcanoes, earthquakes, and
in other words, the Earth
wonder
being the Earth.
Pardon?
In other words, the Earth being the Earth, constantly changing, constantly rearranging, constantly adapting itself. Right? I mean,
Yep, and we're probably not at our best to be adapting totally to it.
No, we're not.
Our practices have become lazy and well, for want of a better word, fraudulent in some ways, and that's going to let us down again.
Yeah, I think so. The way that I see it is, to get through this impending problems, we've got to try not to do what this media sort of encourages you to do, and pick on the weakest stratum of society, smash them to pieces, and then when they've been destroyed, get the next one and destroy them, and just systematically get the majority to crush the minority, until every stratum has been crushed, and is completely manipulable. I think that's what the although there's probably not one person sat there planning it, that is the sum total of the effects of these psyops that they're playing on us in order to steal everything that we've got and got a right to.
Yeah, it's not really only one person. It's an entire mentality that they have.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
And then it trickles down to people who enjoy being the puppet masters of greater puppet masters.
That's right.
Right? That's an old slave control system, right? They called the house Negroes. They would take one of the slaves out, and then they would encourage usually a male, it could be a female house worker though, to then enforce their rule over the others, and they would become super draconian, honestly, like the more brutal. Yes. That way the slavers themselves would be morally, they could look at themselves as Christians, right? Yeah. Whereas the house Negroes would absolutely brutalize the others. Yeah. And then they would teach that down, and so that you end up with this dichotomy of behavior that doesn't, and that's exactly what happens in the government and academic, which is just another form of government. They bring this mentality down. Well, the question is, where are they getting it from? We now know certain personages were absolutely government stooges. Carl Sagan was a government stooge. He was on the Nuke the Moon paper project. That's not going to be the only thing he had his name attached to. And the question is, has anybody in our community gone and taken the time to do the FOIA requests on that, to try and dig up everything Carl Sagan was into? Because we know that isn't going to be the only other secret project that he was attached to, which was defrauding the people. And then he puts on this great personage. Of course, they know that they can find people like this: handsome, charming, excellent voice, reasonably sounding. This is how they found AOC. She tried out. She was a bartender.
I think it'd be a great thing to get to do an analysis of Carl Sagan, a complete debunk of the person, and put it out what people have actually been listening to and believing since the 60s when he started all this.
It wouldn't be a bad thing to publish it as a book, actually. Just an entire a good way to have revenge over for old Velikovsky for him. But
exactly. I think that'd be great.
That interested is getting harder because the Velikovskians are kind of dying out. And you have to remind people that Velikovsky even existed. I mean, I can't tell you. Almost nobody I ever mentioned his name to goes, "Oh yeah, I've heard about that guy, but I haven't read his book." No, that didn't happen. They say, "Who? What?" And they're totally
exactly what I find. Exactly what I find. You might find a few that are that are big followers of Einstein or something like that. No, I'll be to poo-poo him. But other than that, there's no one in the general public anymore has any idea who he was, what he spoke about.
No, it was a conspiracy theorist from who was debunked many years ago, and don't bother reading his books because it's a load of rubbish.
Don't read. Hey, audience, don't read Cosmos Without Gravitation. You might learn something.
Yeah, or World in Chaos. Yeah. World in Chaos. No,
you might learn something. That would make you a danger to society. Can't have you being a danger to society, can we?
Exactly.
Take your microchip and get your passport.
And my second word of advice is don't ever show sort of a blind allegiance to some kind of political movement or if anyone, any kind of authority, because they're all subject to becoming a different entity than the one that you joined, especially after a bit of stress. So it's a matter of keeping nimble, keeping socially nimble, and keeping aware. And then you're always in the right place at the right time, so you're not going to get hurt, and neither are your kids or your family.
Speaking of socially nimble, I've been updating the simple guide for friends, family, and common folk how to get into crypto. Exciting stuff. Now, the tests are ongoing, fellas. but so far, the proof of staking does yield results. It's a bit of an extra step as compared to, say, buying and selling Bitcoin, which for most people their eyes gloss over, which is unfortunate. It's actually not that hard now to use Coinbase or something similar. If you're a foreigner, you could use Binance. Don't use Binance if you're American. It's not worth it. But they've made it harder to use Binance here in the States, and it's just a ridiculous company. The Binance American version, they're just absolute frauds and thieves. However, the new guide has a section on not just PancakeSwap, but on Drip Network, Animal Farm, and Matic. And these contracts, they produce some fantastic returns that can be used to supplement your income. The downside is you got to stake some amount into the contract, but some of these like the Matic contract, you can get your money back as long as the contract goes. And we're talking, 218% returns in only 14 days. So if you're struggling out there because of what they call Biden inflation, it's actually a New World Order agenda. The inflation is, but if you're struggling out there because of this, I recommend that you get onto the gateway, go to the directory, the EPMC directory, find the simple guide, the crypto guide. I think it's in the column that's beneath the MIMS column. And go to it and start look. Now the PDF hasn't been updated to the academia yet, but you can click the bit.ly link and actually open up the guide, and you'll have the most up-to-date work that we're currently on. We're creating the steps now, so there's plenty of ways to try and protect you and your family if you just get hooked into this entire network of energy that we are on about over here. And it really doesn't matter which part of that network. And obviously, the audience has heard Robert. He gets into the numbers. He's particularly into the prime numbers, right? He's big on about the prime numbers. But it doesn't matter if you're into that or the ether or the force or the physics, the p-power, or if you're a Christian or a Judeo-Christian, or really any kind of monotheistic, and you're interested in God, you can start with just the center there, and it will come back out, and you can build MIMS to help your family survive. But here at EPMC, we're putting out products that can help you and your family. And so it's absolutely vital to become to keep your neuroplasticity high, to be able to look at different and new information, because it's emerging fast, and it's emerging faster than the mainstream science or media can keep up with. Honestly, that's the other defense for them, is that, hey, they just don't know. They now there's colleges that are wanting to do experiments that validate our paradigm. That is a huge shift in 20 years, right? 20 years ago, you couldn't get an ether, and even 10 years ago, probably, you couldn't get an ether experiment. And now Dartmouth College is proposing that they actually try to create light and material out of the void, right? That wouldn't have happened back when Searle was alive. When Searle was alive, he was a dangerous crackpot, right? Now
it's quite easy to do that, according to Greenie. This Brown's gas, which is I don't know if it's a form of hydrogen. I think some kind of allotrope. But anyway, it's burning through tungsten with it, and the flame only gets to about 180 degrees centigrade, and it requires 3,200 degrees, I think, to burn through the tungsten. It's a high temperature anyway, massive temperature, and it's just melting through it like butter, and he can wave his hand through the flame. So he's basically measuring the temperature of the flame and the temperature of this molten tungsten, and there's other little bits and bats showing up along with the tungsten, like there's some carbon appeared out of nowhere, and so he's actually got a little bit of cold fusion going on there, and so these technologies are simply reproducible. to create that Brown's gas in safe conditions is viable, and you can get massive energy returns on it because you're actually using a plasma rather than, you know, it's a cool plasma that's burning through the well, it's fusing through the tungsten or whatever you want to melt. I'm sure you could do stone with it and do some fantastic stonework. You know, it's so I think there's going to be real opportunities for looking at varieties of power, energy, and uses as such. So you know, it's and we've got to get away from these 30 billion quid reactors. You know, just 5 across the world. Why not, you know, a couple of your back garden reactors, community size ones? You know, that's all we need.
Yeah, there is so much exciting stuff happening in terms of the ability to actually make you know, more like money using the force, compounded money, and getting out of the fiat system. And there's the West is so how would you say the West is so backwards or behind the curve that you have an opportunity to get ahead of it and be the not just the end user product of the Web 3.0 as Meta, Facebook wants you to be, but to actually get ahead of it and actually be the one leading the Web 3.0 towards this decentralized finance opportunity for your family, for, you know, keeping people you know, healthy and alive in the way that you want. You just got to try. You know, it's not easy to first get into it, but it's totally worth it if you take the time to learn the language and the lingo and to actually get on there and do it. You have the opportunity. Now, it's not without some risk, obviously, because that's just the way, that's the nature of any kind of paradigm shift in the first place, let alone, you know, when you talk about crypto. But crypto is not the only positive MIMS that's happening. I think that people should be aware that despite whatever we say in terms of be ready, be prepared, you know, be prepared to defend yourselves and your family, your neighbors, that, you know, there are positive things that are happening in the science and in the generally in the community. I just advocate that people really stop and pay attention to some of the things that are happening, because there is some really interesting things that have been occurring, you know, in the news, in the science news. So hopefully, you know, the audience is further convinced. They probably didn't need convincing, knowing who our audience is. Probably they probably already believe all that stuff. But anyways, well, I'm going to wrap up this call. My clients will be coming in very soon. This is a good show. You guys talk as long as you like as well. Hit the stop.